For me, that story began over 3 decades ago, the day I lost my little sister. I was only 8 when she disappeared. Her name was Emily. She was just 3 years old, sweet, delicate, always clutching the hem of my skirt like I was her entire world. One moment we were playing at a local park with our parents, and the next, she was gone. No trace. No leads. Nothing but a gold necklace lying in the sandbox, the one our grandmother had gifted her on her 3rd birthday. The loss fractured our family. My mother cried herself to sleep for years. My father spiraled into quiet withdrawal. And me? I blamed myself. I was supposed to watch her. I was the big sister. We filed every report, knocked on every door, chased every rumor. But Emily never came home. Years passed. Then decades. My parents died still grieving. And I learned how to keep going, with that ache always tucked beneath my ribs, like a bruise that never quite fades. I focused on school. Then work. Eventually, I worked my way into product development at a lifestyle company, where I designed eco-friendly everyday items. A few of my ideas hit the market and took off: reusable kitchen wraps, collapsible storage containers, scent neutralizers for apartments. I rose through the ranks quickly. But even when I stood in boardrooms as the youngest senior developer, I felt hollow. So I took the leap, started my own brand with my name on the packaging. I poured everything into it. Late nights. Endless prototypes. Budget disasters. But the grit paid off. By my mid-30s, Claire Bennett Products was a recognized name on shelves in major stores across the country. But love? That didn't come so easily. I had dated a few long-term relationships here and there. But nothing stuck. I told myself I was too busy, too independent, too focused. But maybe deep down, I never let anyone get close enough. Not really. Because the people I loved most always vanished. That changed 2 years ago when I met Ethan Miller. He was introduced to me at an industry conference by a mutual supplier. He owned a mid-sized company that specialized in similar home products, and we ended up on the same sustainability panel. Our banter was easy, our philosophies aligned, and when he asked me for coffee, I didn't hesitate. What started as friendly meetups turned into long dinners, deep conversations, and shared dreams about business, travel, and eventually family. Ethan was thoughtful, steady, respectful. After years of protecting my heart, I found myself lowering my guard. Last winter, on a quiet evening in Malibu after a beachside dinner, he proposed. I said yes. That was when he suggested I meet his family. They're not perfect, he'd warned, but they're family. I smiled. Aren't we all a little imperfect? I had no family left of my own. My parents were gone. I was an only child now, or so the world believed. The thought of gaining a mother-in-law, a brother-in-law, and maybe even sister-like companionship filled me with something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. So, with a bouquet in one hand and a bottle of wine in the other, I arrived at Ethan's family home in Pasadena one Saturday afternoon. What I didn't realize was that the person who opened that door, quiet, shy, and in a faded apron, would be the key to unlocking everything I had lost 30 years ago. The Miller family home looked like something out of a postcard: white paneled walls, a big porch swing, flower beds in full bloom. It gave off the illusion of warmth, of tradition, of safety. Ethan led me up the path, his hand at the small of my back. I could tell he was nervous, but I mistook it for the usual pre-family introduction jitters. I took a deep breath, smiled, and rang the bell. The door opened, and a woman greeted us. She looked to be in her mid-20s, maybe a few years younger than me. Her long brown hair was tied back loosely, and she wore an oversized apron dusted with flour. She had kind, tired eyes and a soft, hesitant smile. "Hi," I said cheerfully. "You must be." Before she could speak, Ethan's younger brother Ryan emerged from the hallway. "Oh, that's just Anna, my wife. She's been in the kitchen all morning. Come in, come in." Anna nodded politely, stepped aside, and disappeared back toward the kitchen without another word. I didn't think much of it at first. Some people are shy. Some feel awkward around guests. But something about the way she moved, like she was trying not to be seen, not to take up space, left a strange impression. Ethan's mother, Margaret, greeted me next. She was well-groomed, sharply dressed, and carried herself like a woman used to being in control. "Oh Claire," she said, pressing her lips to my cheek, "it's such a pleasure to finally meet Ethan's special someone." We exchanged small talk in the living room, sipping sweet tea while Anna's faint footsteps padded back and forth from the kitchen. I could smell roasted chicken, fresh bread, sautéed vegetables. Not once did anyone ask her to join us. When dinner was finally served, Anna didn't sit down. She hovered, serving everyone, fetching napkins, refilling glasses. At one point, Ryan snapped and said, "Anna, the gravy's getting cold." I glanced at Ethan. He didn't flinch. When I offered to help, Margaret gently took my wrist. "Oh no, dear. That's Anna's role. She's used to it." "Used to it?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "She came to us with nothing. No family. No job. We took her in, gave her a life. This is her way of giving back." I bit my tongue, forcing a smile. Anna finally sat down at the far end of the table, barely touched her food, and leapt up the second someone needed anything. No one said thank you. Not even once. And then the real conversation began. "Ethan tells us you run your own business," Margaret said with a practiced smile. "She's actually kind of famous," Ryan added with a smirk. "Claire Bennett, my wife, won't stop buying your bamboo drawer organizers." "Must be nice," Margaret said, her tone tightening. "All that success. No strings. No family obligations. Just career." I stiffened. I didn't choose to have no family. Margaret blinked. Of course. I didn't mean anything by it. But I heard what she didn't say. After dinner, while the others relaxed in the living room, I wandered into the kitchen and found Anna quietly washing dishes, sleeves rolled up, her hands raw from hot water. "You shouldn't be doing this alone," I said. She smiled faintly. "I don't mind." "But I do," I said gently. She glanced over her shoulder, as if afraid someone might hear. "They don't like it when I stop. Ryan says I get things wrong if I rush." "Anna," I hesitated. "Are you happy here?" She looked at me with something between fear and confusion. Like the question itself was dangerous. "I'm safe," she said. "That's enough." I didn't push. Not yet. On the drive home, I finally turned to Ethan. "Why is your brother's wife treated like a maid?" He sighed. "It's complicated. She's not like you. She had a tough life. Foster homes. No education. She's lucky we gave her stability." "Stability isn't servitude, Ethan. She's not being mistreated. She's just not very capable. That's why Ryan keeps her close. She messes things up a lot." I stared at him. "Did you ever think maybe she's not the problem?" He didn't answer. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Anna's hands. Her eyes. The way she stood a little hunched, like she'd spent her whole life trying to make herself smaller. And that necklace. Just for a moment, when she reached to pass me a dish, her collar shifted and I caught a glimpse of gold. A small, circular locket with tiny stars etched along the edge. My breath caught. It looked exactly like the one Emily wore the day she disappeared. No. That was impossible. That necklace had been lost decades ago. This was just a coincidence. Just my mind playing tricks. But what if it wasn't? What if the woman washing dishes like she didn't deserve to exist was the same little girl who used to follow me around with sticky fingers and pigtails? The resemblance was faint. But the age lined up. The timing. The absence of any past. What if she was Emily? And what if no one had ever told her who she really was? I tried to dismiss it. The necklace. The way Anna shrank into herself. The sickening control Ethan's family held over her. I told myself it was just guilt, survivor's guilt, maybe. That I was projecting my long-lost sister's memory onto a stranger. That Anna was simply another woman stuck in a cruel family dynamic, nothing more. But I couldn't let it go. The image of her standing alone in the kitchen that night, sleeves wet, hands trembling as she reached for a dish, haunted me. And that necklace, it gnawed at the back of my mind like a loose thread begging to be pulled. So I did. The next morning, I pulled out the old family photo album my father had kept until he died. It hadn't been touched in years. I found the page easily, a faded photo of me holding Emily's tiny hand, both of us grinning in front of the sandbox. Around her neck, glinting in the sunlight, was that same necklace. Small. Gold. Circular. Etched with stars. It wasn't just similar. It was identical. My hands went cold. I remembered the story behind it like it was yesterday. Our grandmother had designed it herself, commissioned a local jeweler to engrave the stars, representing the night Emily was born. It was one of a kind. Not mass-produced. Not something anyone could buy at a department store. And Anna had it. I couldn't ignore it anymore. That weekend, I called Margaret to offer help with Sunday dinner, a polite excuse to see Anna again. Margaret seemed mildly amused, as though I'd become more useful in her eyes. Ethan didn't question it. He still thought I was being too sensitive about everything. I arrived an hour early and went straight to the kitchen. Anna was there, of course. Alone, of course. Kneading dough silently while the others relaxed in the living room, unaware or unconcerned about the work she was doing. "Anna," I said, gently. "Do you mind if I help?" She hesitated. "Ryan doesn't like." "Ryan's not here," I said softly. "It's just us." She smiled, barely. "Sure." We worked side by side in silence for a few minutes. Then I finally asked the question that had been burning in my chest. "That necklace you wear, where did you get it?" She looked down instinctively, fingers brushing the pendant over her apron. "I've had it for as long as I can remember," she said. "Why?" I tried to keep my voice steady. "Do you know where it came from?" She shook her head. "No. I grew up in the foster system. Moved a lot. But I always had this. It's the only thing I've kept my whole life." I swallowed. "Do you remember anything before that? Before foster care?" She paused. "I remember smells. A woman's perfume. Vanilla and something floral. I think it was my mom. I remember riding in a red wagon, and someone older pulling me through the park, laughing. I didn't breathe. And there's one other thing," she added softly, as though embarrassed. "Winter. I remember it was cold. And someone, a girl, used to hold my hand and take me to this cart that sold fish-shaped pastries. She used to say they were our secret." My hands trembled as I set down the spoon I was holding. I stepped closer, gently placing my hand on her arm. "Do you remember her name?" Anna blinked, confused. "Not really. Everything's fuzzy. But sometimes, I think her name was Claire." Her voice cracked when she said it. I felt the floor tilt beneath me. "I think that's why I got so nervous when I first met you," she said, avoiding my eyes. "Your name felt familiar. I thought I was imagining things." My heart pounded so hard it hurt. "Anna," I whispered, "what's your birth name?" "I don't know. The system gave me my current name when I was about 4. I never remembered anything before that." Tears burned behind my eyes. I reached into my purse and pulled out the photograph, the one of me and Emily. She stared at it in silence. Then her hand went to her mouth. "That's me," she said, voice trembling. "Oh my God. That's me. I didn't realize I was crying until I felt the tears on my lips. That's you, I said. And that's me. I'm Claire. I'm your sister. She stumbled back, bracing herself against the counter. No, she said, shaking her head. That can't be. This doesn't happen. This isn't real. I reached out, took both of her hands in mine. It is real. Emily. I never stopped looking for you. Mom and Dad, they never stopped. We loved you so much. We lost you, but we never forgot you. Her breath hitched. And then she collapsed into my arms, sobbing so hard her whole body shook. We stayed like that, on the cold tile floor, holding each other like time had folded in on itself and delivered us back to where we were always supposed to be. I don't know how long we sat there. Minutes? Hours? But I do know that when we finally stood up, nothing would ever be the same again. After Anna, Emily, and I sat on the kitchen floor, tears drying on our cheeks, it felt like the world had stopped moving. We had just cracked open a door sealed shut for 30 years, and neither of us knew how to walk through it yet. I wanted to take her with me right then and there. I wanted to pack a bag, grab her hand, and walk out of that house without a word. But I also knew we needed answers. We needed closure. And I needed to face the people who had been mistreating her for years. Emily, I said, tasting the name I hadn't spoken in decades, we need to talk to them. Ethan, Ryan, your so-called husband. They need to hear this. She flinched at the thought, wiping her eyes with her sleeve. They won't believe me. Ryan says I make up stories. That I'm too emotional. Too stupid. My jaw clenched. You're not stupid. You're not emotional. You're surviving. And I'm here now. I stood and helped her up. No more hiding. Margaret and Ryan were seated in the living room with Ethan, sipping wine like royalty. They barely looked up when we walked in. Claire, Margaret said, with her signature thin smile, how nice of you to join us. I hope Anna didn't bore you too much in the kitchen. I didn't answer. Instead, I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the old photo of Emily and me, the one I had shown to Anna just minutes earlier. I handed it to Ethan. He looked down. Blinked. Frowned. Wait, this is you? Then his eyes moved to the toddler in the photo. Ryan leaned over, scoffing. What's this? Some baby picture stunt? Look closely, I said coldly. That little girl? That's your wife. Margaret raised a brow. Excuse me? She's not just your daughter-in-law. She's my sister. My baby sister. She was kidnapped from a park when she was 3 years old. Her name isn't Anna. It's Emily Bennett. The room fell silent. Emily stood next to me, visibly shaking. I reached for her hand. Margaret laughed nervously. This is absurd. No, Margaret. What's absurd is the fact that you've had a missing child in your home for years and instead of protecting her, you treated her like your unpaid servant. Ryan stood abruptly. She's lying. She's confused. She always says weird things like that. She's been like this for years. Ethan, still holding the photo, looked between the picture and Emily, then back at me. You're serious? I am, I said. And we're going to get a DNA test to prove it. But honestly, I don't need a lab result. I know my sister. I know her eyes. I know her stories. And I know that necklace she's worn since she was 3. The one your family never even bothered to ask about. Ryan scoffed. That thing? Probably stolen. Emily flinched. I stepped forward. Say that again. He raised his hands, smirking. Fine. Don't get dramatic. Margaret finally spoke, colder now. Even if what you're saying is true, and I doubt it is, what difference does it make? She's a grown woman now. She has a roof over her head, food, a husband. We didn't harm her. Harm? I laughed bitterly. You treated her like a maid. Like a burden. Like trash. You tore down her confidence, isolated her, and made her believe she was worthless. That's abuse, Margaret. That's emotional abuse. Ethan finally stood, unsure. Claire, what are you going to do? I'm taking her with me. She's coming home. Ryan laughed out loud. Home? She's my wife. Not for long, I snapped. You want to trap her here, keep her small because you're threatened by a woman who might shine brighter than you ever could. He stepped toward me, aggressive now. You don't get to talk to me like. Ethan intervened, stepping between us. Enough, Ryan. Ryan threw up his hands and stormed out of the room. Emily was shaking again. I put my arm around her. I'm going to file for legal protection, I said. She's been emotionally manipulated and controlled for years. And once the DNA test comes through, we'll have evidence of her identity. You will not stop us. Margaret sat in silence now, her face stony. Ethan looked down, unsure of where to stand. Claire, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. You didn't care to find out, I replied. I looked at Emily. Come on. Let's get your things. We packed quietly. Emily took only a small bag. Clothes. The necklace. And the photo. She left behind everything else. Symbols of the life that had trapped her for years. On the drive home, she stared out the window, silent. You okay? I asked. She nodded slowly. I just can't believe this is real. It is, I whispered. And it's only the beginning. It had been years since my apartment had felt like a home. The high ceilings, the modern decor, the shelves lined with design awards, they were all symbols of my independence. My success. But never warmth. Never family. That changed the night I brought Emily home. She stood in my hallway like she didn't know if she was allowed to be there. Her small duffel bag hung from one shoulder, and her eyes darted around the space like she was waiting to be told where not to step. I took her hand and squeezed it. This is your home now, too. She smiled. Just a little. And for the first time since we were children, I saw it, the girl who used to follow me through the living room wearing mismatched socks and giggling as she begged for snacks. She was still in there. The next few days were quiet. Gentle. We cooked together, even though neither of us was particularly great at it. We watched old movies on the couch. We visited the park near my place. Not the one where she was taken, but a similar one, with laughter and sunlight and families walking hand in hand. We also cried. A lot. There were nights Emily would wake up shaking, clutching the blanket to her chest like it might disappear. The trauma she carried wasn't something I could take away. But I could be there. I could sit with her, hold her hand, and remind her she wasn't alone anymore. She told me stories from the foster homes she barely remembered. How no one ever asked about her past. How she'd always felt like something was missing. A name. A scent. A voice. And now she knew it was me. Within a week, we took the DNA test. The results came in 4 days later. 99.9% match, full siblings. I printed the papers, held them in my hands, and cried harder than I had in years. We framed a copy and put it on the wall. But more importantly, we sent a copy to a lawyer. Ryan tried to fight it. He tried to claim I had manipulated Emily, that she was unstable, that she was his wife and I had no right to interfere. But he underestimated us. Emily filed for annulment with my legal support, citing emotional coercion, neglect, and long-term psychological abuse. And I made sure every claim was backed with evidence, witness statements, therapist reports, even photos of her injuries from years past. Margaret tried to save face, of course. She showed up one day outside my apartment, holding a tray of homemade cookies, pretending none of it had happened. "We didn't know," she said, smiling tightly. "If we had, we would have treated her better." I looked her in the eye and said, "That's the problem. You only treat people well when they're valuable to you." I shut the door in her face. Ethan reached out a few weeks later. He asked to meet, said he wanted to apologize. That he hadn't seen it, hadn't known how bad things were. Maybe that was true. Maybe he really didn't know. But I did. And knowing what I know now, that's not enough. "You saw her as less," I told him. "You let them treat her that way because you didn't think she mattered. And now that you know who she really is, you suddenly want to do better?" He lowered his eyes. "I'm sorry, Claire. For all of it. I believe you," I said. "But I don't forgive you. It's been 6 months now. Emily is starting therapy. She's enrolled in a community college art program. Turns out, she has a talent for painting soft, emotional pieces full of color and memory. She sold her first canvas 2 weeks ago. We celebrated with wine and pizza on the balcony. We talk about our parents sometimes. How they would have reacted. How proud they would be. How hard they fought to find her, even when the world told them it was hopeless. I like to think they're watching us now, that they finally found peace. Some days, Emily still flinches when the doorbell rings. Some nights, she curls up into herself, afraid the life we've built will vanish like a dream. But then she looks at me. And I see her slowly coming back to life. Stronger. Louder. Whole. Because this isn't just the story of how I found my sister. It's the story of how we reclaimed her identity. Her dignity. Her voice. And together, we're building something we never had before. A future.